This is Chelsea, she's going to be helping me out. So we're going to look at sustainable dog, downward facing dog done in a way which is its most stable and structurally supportive for the most bodies. This doesn't mean it's the only way to do it. It's not the right way to do it. It's a way that is very sustainable. So we're going to take a look at downward facing dog. Chelsea's going to go ahead and come in. Now, if you watched Adaptable Dog, that other video about making the modifications to create a neutral spine, that's the first thing that we're going to do here. So we're going to make sure her hands are at least shoulder distance, but I always err on the side of a little wider than shoulder distance. I think that that feels better in most bodies I see. So she's a little wider than shoulder distance. She's got her feet at hip distance. You probably know this part already. And the knees can be a little bit soft instead of overworking. And then I'm going to ask her to actually lift her armpits towards the ceiling, which is a little bit funny because you think about pressing your chest down in down dog, but instead she's going to lift her armpits up, right? So the humerus bone lifts up in the shoulder socket and the shoulders move more towards the ceiling. And then I'm going to ask her to knit her low ribs in. So she's actually going to go into a little bit of calf, just a little bit, okay? From here, she's now got a little bit of a lift, a kind of energetic drawing in towards the heart, a lift up and in instead of down and out. She's going to root into the thumb and the index finger on both hands just at the base. And she's going to push the ground away and keep the armpits lifted as she pushes the ground away so that her hips move back and up. Now what happens here usually is that the heart tries to sink again, but we don't want it to. We want to keep pulling the heart towards the spine. So there's this muscular drawing this way instead of that way. Right? And she's going to use that lift to move back through the sides of the body so they grow longer. Right? This is neutral spine. She could go further into extension. Melt your heart, Chelsea. Melt, melt, melt. So she could go into this back bending variation. This is not ideal for most shoulders for long periods of time. So she's going to come back up, lifting the armpits, ribs in, sides of the body long, and hips lifted. And then when we get to the back side of the pose, because we're taking the energy from the ground up, keep pulling the ribs in. She likes to go into back bend a little bit. She's going to think about making her thigh bones move back and spiral in a little bit so that the inner thighs feel like they widen out behind her. It's like she creates a kind of peacock tail feather expansions where sit bones go wider. So there's a muscular energy of separating the sit bones. And then the heels can gently descend towards the earth. They don't ever have to touch the floor. It's not an important piece of the pose. Once you have all of this shape, you can start to think about the bandha. So your pelvic floor now is nice and wide. I'm not going to get you. I'm not going to touch you there. But her pelvic floor is wide. And once it's wide, she can imagine the pelvic floor, so that's this sheet of muscle at the base of the core, base of the torso. It starts to drift like a dome towards her heart. And that's Mula Bandha. So you start to create this outward structure of stability, and then you create the internal core connection. The low, deep bellies lifting and widening through the kidneys. That's Uddiyana Bandha. And then if she wanted to, from her sustainable down dog, she could walk her feet up about a foot and a half, lift one leg high to the sky, and shift her shoulders over her wrists. Yep, bend into the other knee. Keep the bandhas and a little hop. Handstands. Yeah, you don't need to do it. Thank you, Chelsea. So that's sustainable. Come on out. That sustainable dog is all about building a sense of structural support so that we can actually relax the outside and rely more on the internal connection of core. And then we build.